He's a psychology major, but he went a different path. You'll find him at ESPN now, VP Programming and Acquisitions, Digital Media at ESPN. John Lasker joins me. This is going to be a fun conversation as we look into his life, look into what fuels him, and not just his work life, but his personal journey as well and what he's overcome. This is the Onto Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with different media outlets, including Tennis Channel. John, I'm excited to have you on and tell your story. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. It's great to finally connect. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, so awesome to finally land this one. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And as you know, this is going beyond just what you do at ESPN and getting to see the human side of you as well, which is I think such a rewarding part of these conversations. To start here, you're not just a dad of one, two, three, but four daughters. What has that taught you about love?
Wow, what has taught me about love? Well, it certainly taught me to be patient. That's for sure. What has taught me about love? I mean, anybody that has children, girls or boys, one or four, like I do, I think would sort of agree with me. Find it sort of relatively indescribable on sort of what it means, to have children sort of entered into your life, the miracle that it is to begin with, but then also the responsibility that comes with it. Um, and it does like get me choked up to like think about my daughters. I'm lucky enough to have four. My oldest is 17, my youngest is 7. And still being able to sort of at night snuggle in bed and watch a little show before you sort of fall asleep together, or read books, things like that. It's incredible, to have people like that in your life that you get to sort of help and influence, and especially them being females. It's so important for me to make sure that they feel as empowered and as confident as they can be as they sort of venture out into the world.
When you are experiencing, John, those valuable moments with them, whether you're watching a show together or whatever it is that you're able to bond in a unique and special way, how do those moments charge you or recharge you for being the better worker? You
Mm.
have those moments at home, and then it's almost like you can take on the world with what you're doing at ESPN.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of orients, like when at least for my experience, being relatively young and making my way through ESPN and working really long hours and really long nights, and really had no other responsibility but to be for myself, and decide what I wanted to do with every hour of my day, which at that point in time was you know be the best employee at ESPN as they possibly can to get to the next level, and certainly that drive is there today, but everything is sort of reoriented, right? It's like the reason that you do things now are different than the reasons I would have done things in the past. So to be able to go home and hang out with my daughters and go to their soccer games or watch a show or play a game and do all those things, it's a nice reminder of like the why, and not just why it's I should be going to work and working my butt off and working all these hours, but like why I should sort of be as efficient, right, and impactful at work as I possibly can, so that I can actually get home, to them. So it's reaping the benefits of the hard work, while I'm at it, but then also make sure that I'm not over consumed by it, so that I can actually be there, for my daughters. I've seen examples, and I think I might have been one of them, even early in my career with my first two daughters, where I was still out of balance. And I'm lucky that I have two younger ones, now that's actually, and I'm a little bit older, and have, a little bit more responsibility, but also a better perspective, on the world, and can sort of treat things a little bit differently.
How do they show you they're proud of you?
Oh, that's hard. I guess I look for like I look for like the little things. Like kids are just amazing, right? Like just the hugs, like coming home and like them, running up to you and like giving. I have this awesome picture at home where I'm like, one of them is like wrapped around my leg, I'm holding another one. There's like, or I'm holding two of them, and like there's another one behind my back, and it's just like that was just me like coming home one day. And it's that's amazing. Like I think, in a lot of respects they don't really know what I do. Um, but I don't think it matters. They don't really care, and they don't have to care. Just the fact that they know that what I'm doing, for the family and for them is what's most important. I do think like where it really hammers home for me is when I'm away. So even for like a day, 24 hours, I'm actually leaving tomorrow to go to Florida for 2 days. And I always be sure to like, I get on the latest flight that I possibly can, and I get on the quickest flight home as I possibly can. And even with being gone for 48 hours, I'll get, multiple FaceTimes,
Oh,
from them, just like looking for me, like, where are you? Can I see your room? Like, when are you coming home? Those types of things. It's amazing. Like, and those are I don't know if that means that they're proud of me. It just knows that they care, right? Because that to me, that's the most important thing.
how many hugs were they giving you 2 years ago?
2 years ago, I was getting a lot.
Yeah. What did that mean to you?
um Man, that was so 2 years ago. Do you want me to tell my
Yeah,
story?
if you're
So
comfortable with it, whatever you're comfortable with, I'd love to hear your story if
yeah,
you're okay with that.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. It's a great opportunity to share it, actually. So in July of 2020, which for context was about 4 months into the pandemic, um, I a really long story short, because I could tell you sort of all the things that were happening to me that I didn't realize until sort of after the culmination of all this. But I wound up suffering what they call a DVT, which is a deep vein thrombosis, which is effectively a blood clot in my lower right leg. That clot broke off and ran through my veins and through my heart and made it to my lungs, where then I suffered a pulmonary embolism. I'm sorry, multiple pulmonary embolism. Um, so it's a really dangerous and a lot of times lethal condition. Um, I'm lucky to be here, talking to you, Bryan, about it. But it was a big transitional moment, in my life. Not only because it sort of helped me better understand sort of the importance of, being um, healthy and taking care of your body, which I was doing, by the way, before this happened, but sort of amplified sort of the need to sort of be as armored as you possibly can for when, the inevitable, sort of threat sort of comes, physical threat, comes like it did for me. But then also, and this took a while to sort of come out of the fog of all this, maybe 6 months or so. The um just 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 treating life differently, and reprioritizing sort of the most important things, which again, starts with, I sort of think about things as like a pyramid now, and it's like, this might sound selfish, but it's, to me, it's the opposite. Is, you know my health is the most important thing, um because with that, I'm allowed to be then the best dad I can be, the best husband I can be, and then the best, employee for a work, for a place like ESPN. If you don't have that foundation and that thing crumbles, you're set to disappoint all those other things that you and otherwise you might think like you're doing things to sort of make those things a priority. So the blood clot was a significant moment in my life. And since that point, one of the big things coming out of that experience was the realization that being a healthy guy, being 45 at the time, um, not having any sort of symptoms or history or anything that would suggest that this was bound to happen to me. I I sort of went on a mission to try to figure out why this happened to me, which, by the way, is 2 years later. I still don't know the answer to that. But have was blessed to find the great folks at the National Blood Clot Alliance, who helped me through a lot of this, and mostly mentally, because it's a big cross to bear for a lot of folks that go through something like that. I had, after my blood clot, had gone back to the hospital 3 other times thinking that I had another one. So that the PTSD, if you will, for folks that go through something like that, if I'm an example of it, is pretty severe, and is crippling, in its own respect. So I made it a sort of point for me, and added it to sort of the priorities that I'm trying to focus on to help the NBCA get the word out about blood clots and pulmonary embolisms, and trying to prevent them, and trying to learn more about them, get doctors to understand them better, get everyday people to understand the things that they can and should be doing to do their best to prevent them. And that's been, I'll call it some of the silver lining, that comes with some of these rather severe, health challenges. I'm happy to say, though, right now I'm in full health, and can do anything that I could that I want. Like, I'm not sort of limited in any degree, and so, and that in itself too is a blessing.
When you get now looking back at those moments and you're able to unpack the pride that you have in yourself with the fighter you are, where does that go when you think about that pride? Where does it take you?
I mean, if you probably go back to, I haven't really thought about this that much, but when I go back to being a young kid, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and had I don't want to say I was in any level of, like, poverty or anything like that. Lived with a working class family in a pretty dominant Polish neighborhood, in a neighborhood called Greenpoint, Brooklyn, New York, which is just north of Williamsburg, which a lot of folks, I'm sure, that would watch this are familiar with. I worked as a store clerk at Busy Bee on Nassau Avenue and Humboldt Street. If anybody lives around there, please go visit. It's still there. But I think, from that time, growing up in Brooklyn, New York, it comes up with its own sort of challenges, which I didn't realize that at the time sort of did a lot to to shape me. I had to be I'll call it a survivor, for most of my young life. Although you might not have seen that on the surface of me growing up, but it was certainly something. There was things I had to deal with to sort of make it through, and effectively make it out of Brooklyn. I always felt like this need to break free, which I ultimately did, and not through my own volition, really. I mean, certainly I had something to do with it, but was lucky enough to find a lot of great people along the way that had an interest in my success for some reason or another. So fast forward, in every sort of instance and sort of critical moment in my life, I always feel like there was some sort of interesting breakthrough, or challenge that I had to break through, and always somebody unexpected, that was there to sort of help me. And so this, the blood clot situation, it was another example of that, I think, where I wound up going through that. And literally, as I was being, coming out of the hospital with really not much information, just like, hey, here's a blood thinner. And like, this, we don't know why this happened, but good luck. And being like, how am I supposed to like operate now? Like, what happens tomorrow? Finding the folks at NBCA, and I'll name them, Leslie Lake and Mimi McKinnon, and Charles Sano.
What do
Those
you think?
three, I think, they saved my life. I really believe that.
You talk about, John, you being your best advocate in how these processes, these adversities you've gone through
Yeah.
have only fueled that more. When you talk about those three names that you just mentioned, what does it mean to have them as such a backbone and advocate for you? You can be that for yourself, but then in a time of desperation and need, what those three did for you, how do you sum up how life-changing that was?
Man, it like just at that time, just knowing that there was other people out there that went through the same thing, made it through, and we're now on like these horses, like on a Calvary, like fighting for the good of everybody that's been through or going through. Like I found Leslie and Mimi like on Twitter. Like
Wow.
I was looking for help, and they they got on a Zoom call with me like in a day.
Wow.
And then from there it was like, holy smokes, like this is going to be fine, you know? It's that easy. Like, and so that's why I do like a lot of what I do. I'm not a doctor. Like I don't know like how this stuff happens. Like, you know, don't know the science of it. Know enough to be sort of a little bit dangerous, but like I hear from people all the time now. It's like, hey, just my friend, this happened, went through the same thing. Can you talk to them? Yeah, of course. I do it all the time.
How does giving other people comfort now that others are reaching out to you and you're on the front lines to help them? How does that give you comfort?
Um, it always feels good to me. Like I think just me not naturally, with the blood clot scenario, but then just in work and with the kids and everything. It's just I always like being being sort of a foundation for folks, like helping them move to whatever the level is that they're trying to. I've always felt really comfortable there helping empower other people, and maybe sometimes seeing things like within them that they might not see themselves, and then helping them find it. With the blood clot scenario, it's a little bit unique because I'm speaking from, everybody goes through their own sort of life experiences. In that scenario, in large part, like I went through it, right? So I can speak very uh very intelligently about what it is to go through it, and can relate to a lot of the things somebody's feeling or going through or thinking, like for real, where in a lot of other scenarios it's like I don't know, what that person's really thinking or going through. I've never been through what they're going through, but I can do everything I can to try to help help them sort of see their way through it. In this case, it's great to be on the other end of it and being able to show people, like I said before, like I could do whatever I want now. Like, yeah, I went through this really dark time and it was life threatening and all that. And, it was a mental challenge and everything, but like, there's light there. There's light at the end of the tunnel. It's clearly there because I'm an example of it.
And you're showing more people that light.
Yeah.
And to which we went back and we were just talking about your life's purpose has changed. And as you use the word reprioritize, because now the glee that you get from knowing that you can help others, I can't even put into words. I don't think there are words, John, to really understand from an emotional standpoint what that must mean to you. In those moments where you probably felt lonely and you felt like your questions weren't answered, to now become part of a family. You talk about the big family that you have at home,
Yeah.
but the power of family, what is that like beyond that too? And how much that means to you and how integral that has been for you in your big life rebound.
It's actually somewhat of a challenge, Brian, because the NBCA family and the survivorship of folks that have gone through blood clots that might not be, board members of the NBCA or anything, or involved in directly in the stuff that the NBCA is doing, is I wish I could do more. And that's now the challenge is, dedicating in all of these like priorities that I do have, is trying to now, balance. I'm very much of the mind. It's like, if I'm in something, I want to be like all the way in. And I've had to sort of get comfortable with the idea as a board member of the NBCA, is like, yeah, it's a small organization and the board members are rolling up their sleeves and doing stuff. But there's like this, I do have a full-time job and I do have 4 daughters and I do want to take care of myself, right? Like, all those things are still like super important and primary. And it's like, where can I actually provide a benefit to that group and that team? And try to do everything I can to not let them down, as well as not let down, the folks that are in need of our collective help.
So you have your time being pulled in multiple directions, like you said, from
Yeah.
your responsibilities in spreading the word in the front lines and helping others dealing with blood clots and having to deal with that, and then your family, and then your work, and then a little time personally in reflection and taking care of yourself. What does taking care of yourself look like right now, John?
So it's multifaceted. And it starts, number one, with eating healthy, which I do most of the time, right? I'm just like anybody else. I enjoy pizza, and other things that might be on the bad for you list, but I think I do a pretty good job of balancing that out with, or overbalancing out with, giving my body the things that that I feel like it needs to, to perform at a high level from a mental and a physical perspective. The second is, I do as much as I can from a meditation and mindfulness perspective. Being of sound, mental health is really important for all of us. And even with it being somewhat front and center these days, which is great to see. Somewhat of the I guess the traditional stigma of mental health issues being brushed aside for us all. Like, it's important, and it's become a primary focus for me. And then obviously the physical health is, I try to make it to my CrossFit gym at least 4 days a week. And that in itself is an awesome community of people And in my gym, there's a couple of blood clot survivors there as well, which is awesome to see. People that have gone through all sorts of issues, and people of all shapes and sizes and ages and stuff, challenging themselves, which is sort of what the human body was built for. Um, and all of that, I think, all just pays back. And if you're doing those things, then you can be the best dad that you possibly can. You can be the best husband and brother and son, and you can be the best employee for whoever it is that you're working for. So prioritizing those things is, to me, sort of like that anchor or foundation to make all those other things optimized.
We
And
talked
I'm not
about
perfect at it. I'm not good. I do the best I can.
sure.
But like that's certainly the goal is to stay focused on those core things.
You talked about that, and you're only human, right? You do the best you
That's true.
can, and you are
Yes.
a fine example of all of those things. And as we started this conversation, we were talking about the love that you get from your four daughters and how that's changed your perspective. But when you've got a great teammate next to you and your wife and what she's done for you, how do you put that into words with everything you've been through and the love that she's shown you?
She's for those that know her, she is just like, she's incredible. Like, she's where I search as much as I can for for energy to get things done, and try to knock down those priorities that I was talking about. Like, she has a motor that's unmatched. Um and a lot of times has me looking at myself, what's wrong with me? Like, how can she operate this, like this, do all of this stuff? And she's an incredible mother to her four daughters. They just absolutely adore her, and I don't think any of them could imagine a minute without her. There's always, I get a question every, feels like every half hour from one of the four girls, is, where's mommy, where's mommy, where's mommy? Like, she's upstairs, or she's out, she's here, like, she's around, like, so she's such a, she is the uh the captain of our family, and
Oh,
the captain of our household. There's no doubt about that. And when I was going through all of this, like, she was, again, incredible. Like, she was, yeah, the house didn't miss a beat. And she was there to support me, and help me through the time in the hospital, and then, more importantly, help me through after, sort of getting myself really back on my feet, and back to where I felt like I needed to be, physically and mentally. And so, um could not have done it without her, and can't do any of this without her. No, not even close.
well, you go back to, as we wrap up this conversation, John, something you brought up earlier, the why you do what you do. And your wife is part of that why, your children are part of that why. Those who are relying on you are part of that why, from those who you can help, from your own story. And you brought up mental health and the importance of that. And the very first thing I said this conversation was, he didn't use his psychology degree. But then I think to myself, wait a minute, it's kind of come full circle here. And that
Yeah.
you have been able to learn a lot from probably that degree and what it's taught you, and the classes, and how you've used that to propel you and get through so many things.
I think it has helped me. I've used this word a bunch in a bunch of different contexts, but there is some foundational element there. I think that helped, that actually helps me appreciate the importance of the mental health aspect of our collective lives. Again, like I said before, it's like very easy to sort of place a stigma on it, or brush it aside, or fight through all those types of things. But and by the way, I was also one of those folks as well, but it has sort of come to bear a little bit more, at least in my life, and I think maybe in the larger world here, like to have a better appreciation for, you know, for that actually being a true, um, uh, a a true point of emphasis, for us in sort of our collective health. Like it's not just eat well and go exercise, right? Like, your brain and your mind are very much like a muscle that needs to sort of be tuned and need to be fed appropriately, right? That things that you eat can affect, like, what goes on, in your mind and your thoughts. But then also, like, you gotta keep, training it, focusing it, just like you would your bicep muscle if you wanted to sort of lift heavy weights, right? Um, so again, that's one of these things I don't necessarily have the answer to, but it's one of those things that I love continuing to sort of learn about and explore and sort of use in my life to just try to get better. Um, and hopefully be able to pass those things down to, to my kids as well. So it doesn't take them, 40 plus years to figure it out, They maybe have a little bit more of a head start.
Well, and to you, and my very first question was the love that you feel from them and that you can show them. What better example of professing your love for your kids and leading them down the right path and teaching them these things? And what a story, John, you have. And it was a beautiful testimony from the heart. And this really meant a lot to me. And I know this is going to mean a lot to a lot of people. I really appreciate you for doing this, John.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you having me, and hopefully this was helpful for all those that are listening and watching.
John Lasker, VP, Programming and Acquisitions, Digital Media at ESPN. I'm Bryan Fenley with Tennis Channel and beyond. John, thanks again.